Welcome back, friends. I have a new business news story that you need to know about. So, this news story came out this morning. A brand new economic report came out, new statistics that are shocking. So, I hope people realize how historic the times are that we live in, because they will be talking about this in business school for decades to come. So the new report that came out was the GDP numbers that were released. So we're going to be talking about those, what they mean. And if you don't usually read the GDP numbers, I'm going to be explaining a little bit about how you should be reading and analyzing them. So let's look at the news story. This is the news story that was published in Business Insider this morning. And it's titled, U.S. GDP surged a record 33% in the third quarter as the economy reopened, roughly double the next biggest jump. Let's take a step back here. As a business leader, it's important for you to understand what is happening in the economy. And so people look to GDP numbers as data to tell us what's happening with the economy. So GDP stands for gross domestic product. And you can think of it as, an income number for nations. So for the United States, when you look at the GDP, it's telling us how much the United States as a country has produced over a certain period of time. So let's look at this story. It's saying here, just as the coronavirus toll drove a record plunge in economic output, the U.S. summer recovery fueled the largest ever jump in gross domestic product. U.S. gross domestic product grew at an annualized rate of 33.1% in the third quarter, the Commerce Department said on Thursday. The reading marks the largest output gain in recorded history based on data going back to the 1940s. It came in roughly double the next biggest jump seen in 1950. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg expected a 32% gain. So this is a huge jump. If you look back in history, not only was it a big jump, it was bigger than people expected. It goes on to say, the reading represents how much the economy would have grown had the third quarter rate lasted for a year. It's a sharp reversal from the second quarter, which saw a 31.4% annualized rate of contraction. So let's look at this chart here. This is showing by quarter the change in GDP growth, going back to 2017. So you can see here we had, GDP growth all the way up to when the pandemic hit. And then we got the drop, and then we got the big drop right here in the previous quarter. Now, this is the quarter results that just came out, and it's a huge, huge recovery. Now, just to be careful here, you have to look down here at the note at the bottom. It says seasonally adjusted annualized rate of change. So the way they report these GDP statistics is it's annualized. So that means they take the growth from this quarter and then expand it out to what it would be if that growth continued over a four-quarter period. So it can be a little deceiving. This works normally because GDP growth is usually pretty small. We're usually talking about, 1% to 4%. And if you annualize 1%, that turns into 4% over the year. But when we have these huge jumps, it really makes it seem massive because in reality, if we had a huge jump over the last quarter, it's probably not going to be the same for the next 4 quarters to reach annual. But since this is always how we've reported GDP growth, we have to keep the metrics the same so that when times return to normal, the data will kind of make sense. But just be aware that these swings seem wild, but they are annualized data, which kind of makes it a little bit extreme. Now, continuing down, and I think this is an important point here, it says, while the 33% GDP increase initially seems to offset the second quarter slump, it doesn't place overall output back at its pre-pandemic highs. Third quarter growth would have needed to reach roughly 46% to balance out the record downturn. So this was a huge leap, but we are still far from being back to where we were when the pandemic started. And that's an important point to remember. So we're headed in a positive direction. This is an enormously positive report, but we still have a long way to go. Now, remember that our goal here is to try and figure out, is the economy getting better? And it's helpful when you're looking at GDP to try and put GDP in context by looking at some of the other economic indicators that are out there. And there's a bunch. There's a lot of statistics and data out there. And you can pull this data and try to figure out, what is GDP really telling me here? One of the most important economic indicators, I'm going to pull it up for you here, is called the United States ISM Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI. ISM stands for, I think it stands for Institute of Supply Management. And so what this is it's an organization that does a survey. It sends a survey out to purchasing managers around the country, trying to understand what is going on in their purchasing departments. And the results of this survey are very simple. They ask a whole bunch of questions, but what they're trying to understand is, are purchasing departments increasing? Are they staying flat? Or are they falling? Are they decreasing? And so they come up with a metric every month. Let's see, so these are the results every month. And a score of 50 on this data means that purchasing is remaining flat. Above 50 means that purchasing is going up. Below 50 means that purchasing is going down. Why this indicator is so important is that this indicator is considered a forward-looking indicator. So this will give you a sense of what is coming, because purchasing is like first in a chain of a series of events that affect the economy. So if people are out there purchasing stuff, that's going to have a rippling effect downstream and is going to boost the economy. So let's look at this data. This is data by month. And so you can see here, April 2020, this was the huge dip when our economy went into recession. So you can see here, this line right here is 50. So if it was here, that would mean purchasing is flat. And so going back to 2019, you can already see purchasing was down. Purchasing was falling before the pandemic even hit. So then the pandemic hit. And then we have actually, for the last 4 months, let's see, this is September, I believe, right here. We've had really good numbers, way above 50. These are great numbers. And you have to remember, numbers above 50 means that purchasing is increasing. So purchasing is increasing here, increasing again, increasing again, increasing again. So these are very fantastic numbers, which preceded the fantastic GDP report that came out this morning. And so this is kind of telling you how those GDP numbers came about, and that the economy is actually growing again. So the next question that everybody's going to ask is this economic growth going to continue on into the future? And that's a big unknown. We don't know if it's going to just continue at the same pace. If you dig into the numbers in this GDP report, you see a lot of this growth comes from government spending. And so if we look into the article again, it says, the CARES Act has been widely praised as a primary driver of the third quarter's sharp improvement, but aid allocated in the bill has largely expired. So, there was this massive stimulus bill that was passed in the United States. It obviously had a big impact on spurring this economic growth, but we really can't count on another stimulus bill coming, which is what this article is saying. And so the question is this going to continue on? That's really uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. So you reading this article today, what is your takeaway of this? Well, if you're a business leader, you're making all kinds of decisions in your business, and you want to know, is the economy doing well? Well, this is telling you the economy is growing. So let's just take this for what it's saying, that this is a really, really good report. I'll tell you, this blows away my expectations. Thinking back to where my thoughts were 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I never expected to see this a report coming out like this. So this is blowing away my expectations. This is a really good report. Let's take the positive news for what it is. And you should be able to use that understanding in some of your business decisions for your company. So that's it. I just really wanted to share this news story with you. Thank you so much for watching. If you have additional accounting questions, you can always email me on my website, wolvesandfinance.com, and I will reply with my rates. Thank you for watching. I'm Zach from Wolves and Finance. Let's go out and make some money.